Hi everyone, welcome back again to our Tech Talk. Thank you for joining us today. Today we are going to talk about automation, software automation to be exact. Amit and I both have a level of experience and expertise on automation. I specifically work on robotic process automation. And in my past work experiences as a mechanical design engineer, I've also worked on design automation. Amit has different kind of automation experience, automation in software testing, and automation is a very diverse topic. And obviously, when we delve into it today, we're gonna find out what different kind of automation there is, and Amit's experience is also quite diverse in different types of automation. And so I thought it would be a good topic to cover today. Both of our experiences will help you guys to understand in different ways how we can automate and improve our lives, and also improve add value to different businesses. Amit, thank you for joining us. We are gonna get right to it. So let's start by you explaining us what is automation.
Thank you, Rinat. That was a good introduction. Yes, automation actually enhances our life. It actually increases our productivity. And a lot of people get worried about automation when they think about, okay, it'll replace us. It'll replace manual work. But automation actually enhances our productivity. So automation is anything that can be done automatic or on its own. And that's what the term is, automation. So you have a manual car and an automatic car, and in a manual car you'll have to shift every gear manually, but in an automatic car the gear changes by itself, so on its own. So similarly in software automation, when we talk about things, we want things to do by themselves rather than we clicking on a button or taking a screenshot or even doing some activity in a web browser. So that's why that is essentially automation. So doing things on itself, and it has various aspects to it. And in software automation, you have various platforms, browsers. You can automate the data that you play with, the GUI that you interact with, the database, etc. And we all do automation in our lives just to enhance productivity. So things that you do repetitively, you want to automate. So like changing gear in a car, that example, I think that's very apt. So when you're in traffic, you tend to change gears quite a lot, and people become very frustrated. They are like, I don't want to change the gears all the time. So that's why automatic cars are so popular. Similarly, in software automation, you do things sometimes repetitively. You try to do the same things again and again. So in order to increase your productivity and you focusing your time on something important, you try to automate it so that it frees up your time and you focus on just the work that lies ahead.
Yes, absolutely. It's very interesting. I think I've read this somewhere that if you're doing anything, if you're doing the same thing 3 times, then consider automation. If you're doing it 4 times, then definitely do automate.
Definitely.
Because the return on investment on spending, say for example, it could be automation in business. In that case, you're investing to to get that resource, or even in personal life, you're then investing your time and effort to understand and implement that automation. But the return on investment is always a positive when the return on investment is always positive when you are automating, because the power of it is so easy to grasp. Even if you're doing something only 3 times and you're thinking, oh, it's not worth it, but then again, sooner or later you'll probably be having to do that again in future, and then you already have that piece of work automated, and you'll keep getting return out of that. So yeah,
Definitely. But here we have to be careful, Rinat. The thing is, a lot of people, when they try to think of automation, they think, okay, let's get rid of people. We'll automate few things and we'll get rid of people. But they forget that it doesn't help with getting rid of people. You get rid of the work that they are currently doing, which is repetitive. So you can use them
Yes.
for something else. So I think we have to be clear, because there is this misconception in this industry that, okay, let's automate and get rid of people. We'll reduce a lot of, we'll save a lot of money. But that's essentially not the case, because what you're trying to do is get rid of repetitive work and making
Absolutely.
humans more productive.
Yes, and I just wanna, yeah, I also wanna add on to this, because most of my, as a robotic process automation expert, most of the time, a big part of my job has been to convince people that actually no one's gonna lose their job. And I remember one of the projects I've worked with where I built a robot which was um, measured as 40 FTE. So FTE stands for full-time earner. So when you're measuring, you are kind of measuring against the time saved. So, but none of those 40 people actually lost their jobs. And I have, gone back and found out, and I know for a fact that that wasn't the case. And also, another thing to look at is, you know, yeah, I'm building robots to automate. But before this time, 20 years ago or even 30 years ago, when Microsoft Excel first came about, Excel is a great automation tool. Before that there was calculator, there was many repetitive calculation. But when the Excel came about, no one lost their jobs, but they just upskilled themselves to learn Excel. So jobs become more and more interesting day by day, but no one actually loses the job. So that's very important. As you rightly said, it's a very important thing to actually establish that. Yeah, no
Yes,
one no
yes,
one is losing their job, but automation doesn't take jobs away, but makes your jobs more interesting.
absolutely. So, I mean, yes, rightly said. I mean, especially in software test automation, or software testing, because that's the field that I currently work in. There is this whole thing about, oh, are you a manual tester or are you automation tester? And I think in our last couple of talks, we talked about both our robotic process automation and we talked about software testing. And in both of those things, we ended up saying that, okay, it enhances productivity, it automates some things, but it's actually not doing testing. It's doing checking.
Right.
It's different.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, and people always confuse that and they say, oh, let's get rid of manual testers. And if you're a manual tester, you're not productive enough. So you don't know how to script, you don't know how to program. So let's get rid of you, and then let's replace someone with programming skills, not testing skills. And those skills are actually quite different.
Hmm.
And then what happens is they write a good program, but they're not actually finding bugs with it. So this also happens. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, from my experience, that's what I can say.
Right. So okay, that's good to sort of know about before we sort of dive into the details. So what can we automate? I mean, what are the things that are automatable? You know, we started the talk with different ways things can be automated, etc. I mean, I can imagine desktop application, there are mobile apps, there are web apps, and in testing, I think you'd probably know about other
Yes.
things to automate. So what can we automate?
So actually, the automation spectrum, it's quite vast, and you can automate almost essentially anything, because in the end, we are creating software and we write some code to build those software, so we can write some code to automate those software. It's up to us how we build those software. Can that software actually have certain key identifiers in order for us to automate it? So we can automate desktop applications. So there are tools. So like your application, you work with UiPath. So UiPath can do desktop automation. It can interact with Excel, folders in Windows, etc. But of course, it's limited to Windows. But there are other automation tools for OS X as well. Then coming to mobile, you have mobile applications, so you can automate that. Again, you will have to identify certain elements on the application, and then you can automate. There are tools. The most popular is Appium, and Appium is cross-platform. That it means you can use it on both OS X and sorry, iOS and Android. So you can, it's cross-platform, which is useful because then you can write a code in one language, and then you can use it for the other platform as well by just tweaking it a bit. And then when it comes to browser automation, the browser automation is very vast, and browser automation deals with mostly the GUI, the front end. So again, with desktop applications, the front end normally doesn't change. So you will have buttons at a specific place. If you open the window in a maximized state and you know the screen resolution, you know exactly where the button will be, and you can click on that button, or you can identify, okay, if I scan the whole screen, what is the place where the button is actually, and then I can just click on that place. So that's one way to automate. And similarly, in GUI based web browser automation, you'll do the same thing. You'll identify the web elements and then interact with it. But there's a lot of test data, backend automation. So you can write scripts. So in Windows, it's very popular. We have Windows batch scripts. So batch scripts are nothing but Windows command written in a sequence, and it executes them one by one. And you can automate that. So basically, it runs few Windows commands, and you can, so network engineers or people who are working in the IT department of any organization, they have to install Windows quite frequently. They have to debug systems, machines quite frequently. So they have to automate some of their process. And then you have scripts to automate your day-to-day activities. So there is, in our talk on UiPath, I mentioned about Autohotkey, which is a combination of hotkeys and automation scripts, and which can then help you to automate few of the tasks that you do repetitively, like typing your email address, typing the address, opening a particular application or opening a particular folder, starting a particular application, etc., etc. So with
Yeah.
a couple of hotkeys, you
I,
can do
I
that.
actually I actually remember, I think in one of our last talks you explained something
Yes.
that was so impressive. I think the print screen thing, like, you
Print
press the
screen.
print
Yes.
screen. Tell us
Yes.
again, what does that one do?
So basically, as a tester, you normally have to take a lot of screenshots because you have to tell the developers, okay, guys, this is what I found, and this is not the right behavior as per the requirements, the business requirements in this case. So I have to take screenshots to help them understand, and I take screenshots regularly. And normally, what you do is you take a print screen, or you do use a snipping tool, and you have to save it manually, and you have to give it a name so you don't forget, and you have to save it at a particular location. So every time you do that, it's a lot of steps. So you press print screen, or you open snipping tool, you select the area of the screen, then you click on save, then you save it in a particular folder, give it a file name, click on save, close it. So there are like 6 or 7 steps just to take one single screenshot. It sounds that, okay, it's a very simple task of just taking a screenshot, but if you have to do it repetitively for every test step when you're executing, it takes a lot of your time. So I decided, okay, enough is enough. Let me just automate it because I'm doing it frequently. So are there tools in the market? There are tools, but of course you'll have to pay for them, or they take a lot of memory. Can we use any Windows built-in commands that can do the work for me? Print screen does it, but print screen again, if you print screen, you have to either open Paint or Word and then press the screenshot. So it's not helpful. Then what's the other activity? So then I found Autohotkey. I created a script. It it does print screen, but it opens Paint. It takes the screenshot, puts it in Paint, saves it, gives it a timestamp, and then saves it to a particular location, closes Paint. So with the press of a hotkey, I've automated the whole process. So now whenever, whichever project I work in where they need a lot of screenshots, I just use my script. And the best thing is I don't even have to install it. I can run it in a portable version. So because it's
Wow.
using the Windows native functions or libraries, I don't have to do any install. So in a lot of environments where there is restriction in installing software, you can run it as a portable application, and then just increase your productivity. So yeah, that's one example.
Yes, yes. I mean, I really like this example, and this actually also helps me explain that other thing that I was talking about, return on investment. Say, for example, I like this idea, but I don't know anything about this software AutoHotkey, and so now if I'm thinking about, okay, it's saving me 3 seconds every time. I don't have to take as many sprint screens, but if I now want to download the software, learn how to do it, and then do this whole programming to do this, it'll probably take me a one full day. or maybe less, but
Yes,
let's say one full day. When I'm thinking, okay, one full day is, even if I put 8 to 10 hours, that was, that's not worth saving 3 seconds. But you have to think about, this is going to save me 3 seconds for, unforeseeable future. And
exactly.
it is not just saving me time, but it's also saving me that, mental, like, I would feel so much better if I didn't have to do this mundane task over and over again. And,
Exactly.
it would just be so satisfying as well. So there are many benefits of it as well. And the return on investment is always positive with automation.
Yes, and anything that's repeatable in life in
Mm.
general, you should automate in life.
Yes.
So if you do a lot of Excel calculations, automate that. If you work with a lot of Word documents, try to automate it. If you generate a lot of reports, automate it. And this has we have seen this across the industry. It's not just software industry, manufacturing. A lot of times they've automated the whole assembly line. So it helps, and automation actually gives opportunity for human beings to do more cognitive based tasks rather than repetitive tasks where their brain is not that much utilized. Because once you do something repetitive, your brain gets used to it, and you don't even have to think about using your brain to do those tasks. You just do it without even thinking. Like uh, like we uh, like we breathe, the way we breathe, it's now so much part of our life. We don't have to think about breathing. We just breathe. It's like our brain has automated that whole process.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, we don't consciously do it. It just, it just always going on. But yeah, very interesting. So, how can I mean? Obviously, you talked about different, things we can automate. The infrastructure. How about more in testing arena? Like, what kind of when we talk about test automation, what does that mean?
So when we talk about test automation specifically, it means execution of test scripts. So normally when you do testing, so you say, okay, what do you want to do with this testing? So say suppose I have Spotify app, and I listen on Spotify. I listen to music on Spotify app, but the app has other functions and features as well. Like there is a login feature, there is a playlist option. I can create playlist, I can like a playlist, I can save a playlist, I can listen to songs, I can listen to podcast, I can see their their screenshots, their screen art. Then I can play the music, I can pause the music. So I can do so many things. I can cast the music on a IoT device, say my Google Home or Alexa, etc. So I can do so many things. Now, if I want to test all this, I'll say, okay, I want these are the things this software can do, and these are the things I want to check. And the way I will check is by writing this script. So I'll follow this particular order. I'll start with login. I'll try with multiple combinations of username and password and see what works, what doesn't work. We don't know yet what works and what doesn't work, and we'll try different combinations of. So that's data. So the username and password is nothing but the test data. So this is the data that we'll try to check or test whether this is working correctly. And then once you test everything, you have all these scripts written with all the steps that, okay, these are the things we want to test in the app. Now you add a new feature. So all the features that were already there, which I described earlier, plus one new feature. And now you have to test everything again.
Right.
And now you go to the second iteration where you add all the new features plus one plus one. So now you have two new features plus all the features I described. So now in this scenario, you have to execute all the test again.
Right.
Now, this time you already know the results. In the first time, you didn't know the results, so you were trying to identify what the result should be. Once you know what the result should be, you try to then automate it. So by that, what it means is all the tasks that I defined, right from logging in to clicking a song, liking a playlist, saving a playlist, etc. You try to automate that using a software. So if it's a browser-based software, you will have to use a tool that can interact with the web browser. So a browser-based automation is nothing but identifying elements on a HTML page. So whatever you see on the web page, you have to first identify it and then try to interact with it. So what that means is, suppose there is a button, I want to click it. So first I need to identify where the button is. Then need to identify whether I'm clicking the right button. Then I click it. And then I wait for what the outcome is. And because I've already tested it before, I know what the outcome will be and what should be the expected outcome. So I will code for that. So I'll say, okay, if the outcome is this, pass. If the outcome is anything else, fail. So I'm not testing it anymore. I'm just checking whether I'm receiving the expected outcome when I tested it for the first time. So
Right.
that's the difference. And now what I did is I saved time. So instead of doing it again and again, whenever a new feature is added, I just automated the whole thing. So I start with the data. So sometimes you have a lot of data. So what you do is you put it in an Excel and you make your automation framework, whatever it is, to ask to look for the data, try to log in with multiple scenarios where the username and password keeps changing or they have different characters, and then try to log in and then test whether it's working or not. So that's data. Then you have the element identifying, and then you have the action on the element, and then you have the whole execution. Once the execution is done, you have to generate a report. So there is no point of doing all this testing and automation if you can't generate a report. So you want a report which says, okay, the script or the automation tool, it executed these many test cases. This is the result. These many passed, these many failed. The things that have failed, we have to take a screenshot. Here are the screenshots. So now you have everything, and that's how basically you implement it. So you're thinking about everything. And this is very specific to browser, but now in browser also you have multiple browsers. You have Google Chrome, you have Mozilla Firefox, you have Apple Safari, you have Microsoft Edge. So now if you want to open your website on multiple browsers and check whether the rendering is correct, you will have to test it on multiple browsers. So again, this is repetitive. You're testing the same login feature on multiple browsers, so better automate it. So yeah, that's how you would go about implementing. You would think about what you want to implement, where you want to implement, the data, the environment, error handling, etc. And then yes. So basically, these are the key things that you want to think about when you're doing automation.
Right, right. This is actually quite insightful because I always wondered. I mean, yeah, I'm automating business processes, and I'm thinking, okay, there's a lot of benefit to it. But when I think about test automation, I was like, you're gonna test whether it works or not. What is there to automate? But no, you've pointed out really well that a set of test environments. But then when one feature is added, of course you have to test whether that feature is affecting the rest of the operation. So you have to do all the operations. But this time you
Yes.
actually have all the information. This time it's more of a white box testing because
Yes.
so
Yes.
that way that first parts can be can be automated. Yeah, that's actually good. I'm actually really happy to know this. I always wondered that.
Yeah, I mean, testers, they have to think differently. I mean, from a development point of view, you are trying to build things,
Mm-hmm.
which is again it's a very creative work. So you have to think innovatively on how to build things efficiently. As a tester, we have to think whether that build, whether what you build is actually working for the consumer, whoever is going to consume the product or use the product. Is it actually working for them? And how does it work for them? Is it actually slow? Is it fast? Is it secure, etc., etc.? And do the basic features work? Because sometimes you think, oh yeah, I've built it, but then it breaks in a different environment. So there are some different skill sets needed in order to do this kind of work.
Absolutely, absolutely. Right. So tell us a little bit about principles of automation.
So, I mean, again, I mean, coming back to the same things, principles of automation starts with, uh, so okay, so let me go back a bit. In the industry today, currently, whenever you go to any organization, they say, or you look at a job advert, they all talk about, this is the tool we are using. Do you know how to use this tool? If yes, please apply. And they are more focused on tool. So they are not focused on problem solving. So again, you have to first identify what the problem statement is. So I think that's one of the main principles when you think about test automation. It's not about first thinking about, okay, we'll use this fancy tool and we will save this much money. No, but what problem are you trying to solve? And actually, do you need to automate it? What's the benefit? So a lot of people, they get bogged down by, okay, let's say RPA. Okay, people will
Mm-hmm.
say let's use UiPath. They don't know what UiPath is.
Yeah.
They just heard from someone and they say,
Yeah.
okay, let's use UiPath. It'll save us so much time. But then when they start to implement, they think about, oh, the license cost is here high. Then we need a developer who can actually come and do the work. That developer is expensive. Then we haven't thought about all the environments and the data. Then what information does the developer need? So the developer needs someone to train them about the system or the process, how the business works, etc., etc. So now you're thinking, okay, I thought the person will come and they will automate and it will be done in a week or two so time. But now it has taken 2 months and I've still not got any benefit from it. And I've paid so much money. So, so I think one of the first principles is look at your problem statement.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have identified what problem you want to solve, then you think about the tool. Okay, so this is what I want to solve. This is where I'll be running it. This is how I will want to run it. This is what, and then you think about, okay, this is the tool I will use because this is the tool which is most suitable for this problem. There are tools
Yes.
specific to different problems. So you cannot use a Android automation tool on Windows and say it's not working, but it's not designed for that. So for specific problems you have specific tools and you need to identify that. So that's the core principle of test automation, that think about this. Also think about scalability. So a lot of times when people write test automation, they write a script and they think, oh, it's done, it's fine, everything is working, I'm happy. And then after a few months they have added so many scripts, it's difficult to manage, it's difficult to run, everything takes a lot of time. Plus it's difficult to maintain those scripts because people take a lot of time, they don't understand what is what, features keep changing, so it's difficult to update. So you need to have this thinking in the beginning. If my feature set increases, how will I maintain all this code? How will I, who will actually maintain it? Because say suppose you hire a contract, a consultant, okay, UiPath
Mm-hmm.
consultant. The consultant comes, does the job, goes. Now, there is no one in the organization who knows UiPath. There's no, even if you create a documentation, there's no one with the expertise to actually run and debug. Even if they cannot create something new. They can only fix maybe some things. They cannot create something new. So there is this additional challenges. So you have to think about scalability. So, and again, the scripts that you write, again, best coding practices, make sure that any other person who looks at your script can actually understand it. Because what happens normally is that you write a script and you're very happy with it, but 2 months down the line you have 1,000 scripts and it's difficult to maintain the data, it's difficult to scale it, it's difficult to
Yes.
actually see what code to modify, or how each code is linked to each other, and can we reuse some of the code. So you have to think about scalability right from the beginning. You cannot just say that okay, I've scripted it and it's working, and then after 2 months you have 1,000 scripts to execute. So that's not a use case. That's not, you're not solving any problem with it, you're just creating new problems for yourselves.
Yeah.
So you have to think about scalability, and then maintenance. I think this is very key. A lot of times people think about just creating the scripts, getting done, and then they forget about the rest of the things. So suppose a UiPath consultant such as yourself goes to a project and they build a code and they code everything perfectly, and then what happens is you leave because your job is done. You have automated everything.
Yeah.
The business process is now automated. You've provided some documentation as part of your contract. You have given some documentation and then you have left. Now what happens is they have a problem. No one understands UiPath in their company, in the organization. So what happens? They ask someone to look at the documentation and then try to fix it. Of course, they can fix it, but if they have to write a new code, they can't. So you need to have the in-house knowledge to maintain those scripts as well. So it's not just return on investment on, okay, I've saved few seconds, but then you have to also consider the cost of actually having a person 24/7 or whatever to actually maintain those scripts. Because if you're going to use them regularly, they need to be maintained, because sometimes people change things. They change in the front end, they change in the back end, they change in the GUI. Some small things change, and then everything breaks, everything stops working, and then you need someone to fix it. And that's where you need to think about maintenance of code. Okay. So I think those are, I mean, the key principles. So you think about the problem statement, you think about the scalability, and you think about the maintainability of those things. So once you know, okay, what problem you're trying to solve, you can get the tool. Then how scalable it should be. Then that based on that you design your framework. How will you manage the data? How will you reuse the code? How will you do, etc., etc. And then with the maintenance. So once everything is done, who will maintain it? Who will fix it when there is a problem?
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah.
To be honest, all the parties involved in an automation project has some responsibility to overcome these problems, and all the three things you mentioned, they're so important in every way. And I've come across examples of this in my professional life so many times. And as a developer, what I always do is I always, even if I'm told or not, I always code so that the solution, overall solution, can handle a lot of these things. For example, you mentioned scalability, right? In When I'm making a robot, I'm obviously coding to solve the current problem. Business has
Yes.
explained to me what the problem is and what needs to be automated, but I'm also thinking about, if this was to expand, if the business expands, and then they have currently they're, say for example I'm automating an invoice processing. So currently, we have these list of 5 companies who have these 5, templates of invoice that they send. But I'm also thinking about, what if it expands to 20 other companies, or however the robot is currently
Yes.
processing. So whenever I'm doing the development, I do it in a modular way, so it can, other building blocks can be added onto it in future, or
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
sort of expand.
Exactly.
That's how you can, how a developer can help with, kind of future proofing the robot. And then there is the main, when you talk about maintainability, I think it's also a, if the robot breaks after 2 months, it's, people automatically think, oh, the development was probably not good. So even though even though I wasn't, this wasn't in sort of the requirement,
Requirements. Yes.
what I always do is, I say, for example, if you're pressing a button in a web page, what I always do is, first, the robot tries to find the button using the HTML code. And say, for example, if it changed, the login button can be called sign in, by the website provider, and that has nothing to do with the
Exactly.
robot or the business. What I
Yes.
do is, I say, the first look for login. If you can't find in, then look for sign in. If you can't find that, then look for, something else. And say, for example, if the button appearance changes, I also then say, I put in like 3 or 4 fallback processes so the robot doesn't break.
Oh wow.
Um, and also, I also put in like some sort of logging mechanism. So if it does go to the fallback, then it kind of logs that in somewhere in a log report or something. So then whoever is looking at it knows that, okay, now the robot is constantly going to this fallback option. That means that soon it might be a situation where the robot will not be able to handle anymore, so they can anticipate something like that. So there are things you can do beforehand at development stage, or even,
Exactly.
at the you know point of, before deployment, which will help the
Exactly.
business in many ways. So yeah, every entity can help, and these are the things that one should remember to do or to take into account.
Especially, I mean, with the current state of software automation and coding, everyone is thinking about agile. So it means you have to give
Hmm.
a minimum viable product as soon as possible to the customer, which makes a lot of business sense. But that means you cut corners. So you try to send a buggy product, get a feedback, fix it, send it again, deploy it again, get some feedback, and then add the features and deploy it again. So it's good because you have something to give to the consumers, but then it's a very slow iterative manner in which you are releasing features. It, of course, it's a sensible way to approach business, because then you are making sure that if the product is good, they stick to it for a longer period of time, because you keep drip feeding them features. And as long as you can drip feed them features, they will subscribe to your product. The moment you give a full-fledged product, they will use it, and then they'll say, okay, I don't have to pay money for it anymore. I know I've got all the benefits from it. So yeah, I don't need to use it anymore.
Absolutely. And also, we also have to remember, agile doesn't mean to do a half-assed job. As agile means that, yeah,
Yes.
we do an MVP, minimum viable product,
MVP,
which,
yes.
yeah, the key word is viable. Is minimum viable product, but at least has to be viable. If it's not viable, then obviously
Exactly.
you haven't even met the minimum requirement. So yeah, agile doesn't
Yes.
mean that you can do a half finished job. It just means that you are given a ongoing timeline rather than having a very hard deadline, or
Absolutely,
waterfall
absolutely.
method. Yeah.
Yes, and yeah, this happens quite a lot in the industry. I mean, you say people are working in agile, and
Mhm.
then you go and then you release at the end of a sprint. You do sprint review, and you have not given any feature. It just you've done some back end, you've done some refactoring, or you've just added something, but it's actually not
Yeah.
visible to the customer.
Yeah, yeah, I think I've heard this in a news a few days ago. Like, a video game came out. It was like really sought after video game, and
Cyberpunk 2077.
yes, it was like many copies were sold in the beginning, and then it was so
Yes,
buggy that some platform
yes,
had to actually withdraw it because it wasn't even
and
fully
they
used.
offered refund. It was huge PR nightmare for the company that released it. It
Exactly.
was the
So
one of the most anticipated games of this pandemic. During this pandemic, Keanu Reeves from Matrix, he was there
wow.
in as an avatar in the
Oh
game,
wow.
and the graphics were so amazing. And but yes, it is a buggy product. Maybe
Yeah,
they didn't
yeah.
test properly.
So yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, absolutely. Agile doesn't mean don't take agile too far that it doesn't
Yes,
even
yes.
deliver at
I
all.
mean, for any business to work, you have to think about the problem statement. Again, I think that is very key. Even before you select the tool, tool is just to solve a problem. I
Yes.
keep repeating it and I'll keep repeating it. Tool is just to solve a problem. In an interview, when people ask me, okay, do you know this tool? I said, I know how to solve this problem. I can figure out the tool.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
if you know what
absolutely.
you want to do, you can figure out the tool, right? So if I know, okay, I want to search for this. So based on what I want to search, I type the search key in Google and Google gives me the result. Google will not automatically know by itself what I want to do or what I want to search. I need to know what I want to search. I need to define my problem, and then Google will be able to solve it.
So yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean exactly. I couldn't agree with you more. Knowing the problem statement, understanding what your final vision is before you start, setting up the acceptance criteria and the final vision is so important. And yeah, I mean, as you rightly said that you'll keep repeating it. Yeah, it needs to be iterated and reiterated. That that is very important. For example, and the right tool as well. I mean, tool is only I mean, if we take like if we take an example, for example, you want to screw a screw into in somewhere. You can have a screwdriver, a manual screwdriver, or you can have a power tool. Um,
Yes,
I mean, which tool you use? Yeah, because it's a power tool, the drill. It might take you a minute to learn if you've never used one before. It might take you
yes,
a minute to learn it, but the problem remains the same.
yes,
And if you know exactly what needs to be done, you need to screw the nail into something. You screw the screw into a place. You don't need to hammer a nail into it, or you don't.
exactly. So you have automated the process.
Yeah, well, yeah. With the power tool, you can, with a drill machine, you can automate it. It is powerful, and if you're screwing 100 screws, then obviously it does help. But using, which tool you're going to use, obviously there is that difference. Whether you want to use a manual screwdriver or a power tool, but it will only take you a very small amount of time to learn that power tool, but you need to
Exactly.
understand that what is the actual problem. The problem is they need to screw them. You don't need to
Yes,
nail something with a hammer. So these are two different problems and two different
exactly.
solutions. So that's basically, my example on how important it is to know the problem and the solution, what the solution looks like. Then you can choose the right tool for it.
You've nailed it.
Thanks.
You've nailed it. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is what I keep telling people, that define the problem statement. Once you know, then tool, you can learn the tool. It's not a big deal. You can read the documentation and
Yeah.
learning tool. But in an enterprise environment, when they pay a lot of money, they expect people to know the answer or the solution beforehand. So they want someone with the experience of handling those tools. So even so, suppose you invite a person, say a building contractor in your house, you would expect them to learn those tools, at least all the tools. So in general, it's good to know those tools and
Hmm.
at least the basic features and know how to use them, and then you can work over it, like how to use it, where to use it, etc., etc. So,
Yeah.
and software testing and software automation, it applies the same principles, because once you know whether you want to do it on browser or in a desktop application or a mobile application, then you can start thinking about what tool you want to use and what are the features. And I missed one thing, and that is the programming language. Because in all these things, you will have to script, you will have to write a code, a piece of code that will do the job on your behalf. So you click a button, it executes the code, and that code has to be written in some kind of programming language which the computer or the tool understands. And that could be Python, Java, JavaScript, Ruby, etc., etc. So there are lots of programming languages in which you can write your scripts.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Right. So, obviously we've talked about that already a little bit. The things that we need to consider before trying automation. But what are the other things that we need to consider? Like, as not only just test automation, but in automation in general. Before thinking of automation, what are the things that we should take into account?
So, I mean, normally whenever you automate something, say I'm automating a script on my Windows machine, and I want to do some things, say take screenshots or maybe put something in Notepad, a text which I copy from the internet and save it. So I need to know what kind of data I will be using for that kind of automation. So will it be some data that's pre-existing, or will it be data that I have to create from scratch? Plus, in an enterprise environment, what happens is, say cloud environment. So now cloud is getting very popular, right? And in cloud, what happens is you can deploy everything by a piece of code. So there is this concept called infrastructure as code, where you deploy cloud infrastructure, say a virtual machine, say a virtual machine with a specific hard disk capacity, virtual machine with a specific hard disk OS and computing power, virtual machine with the computing power, hard disk, OS, and RAM. So you can define all these things, and with a piece of code, you can deploy this on AWS, Google, or Azure. And with that piece of code, you can deploy it. But now what happens is they start charging you. The moment you build an environment and you start playing with it, they start charging you. They start billing you for it. So you need to make sure that once you finish your job, you what do you say? You destroy that environment, so that you don't get billed for it. So this environment creation and destruction is also quite important, especially when you are thinking about automation. Because if you run your script and you run it in a cloud environment, but you run it only for a few, say, minutes, and then you stop it, your environment is still up. So you have to think about deprovisioning the environment. Then the environment might have some data. So every time you have to start from scratch. So you have to have the script for that. Okay. So every time start from this base environment. Don't add anything on, and whatever you have done, or maybe erase it, forget about it, things like that. Then if there is any error, so especially in automation, what happens is, as you mentioned, the login button can change to sign in, the color can change, the location of the button can change, etc. So you have to be prepared mentally that, okay, if this scenario happens, how will my script work? Will it be able to handle it? So you need to code for that as well. So error handling is also quite important. You need to be able to handle all errors. Of course, you cannot code for everything. Similarly, you cannot handle all possible errors, but The more robust it is, the better, because then it's more stable. It will not crash. So we remember that old Windows used to crash quite a lot. We used to see that
Yeah.
blue screen of death,
Oh.
BSOD, which everyone is quite familiar with. So yes, so test environment, and then data, and then I mean, you can the error handling is done. Now once everything is done, you have to think about reporting. So I mentioned you have to create a report, but the report needs to be sent to someone. It's just not useful if the script runs in the middle of the night, say at 12 o'clock in the night, and then finishes by 1 o'clock in the morning, early morning, and now the report has been generated, but it is just sitting there. So no one knows what has happened. No one knows how many scripts have passed or failed, and it's just sitting there. You have automated this reporting process, but you have not automated of sending the report to people. So people who are coming, say in the morning shift, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock early morning, they come to work. They have to manually see the report. They don't get an alert. So right from the time you check your email while you're commuting, you don't know what has happened. You have to come to work, open a folder, open the report, then see it. Automate
You
that
also
process as well.
you have to remember to do that as well, because
You
you
have to
might
remember to do
go
that.
about your day like as if nothing happened, and something is probably just paused indefinitely.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So automate that process as well. So the report, not just creation of report, but sending the report. So once that is done, I think you have a robust system. So you start with the programming language, you start with the scripts, the error handling, the execution reports. So then your script is ready, and the test environment, which is quite important, especially in cloud. I think cloud, it's more important. Plus, if you notice, the in the whole conversation so far, it's all using code. So code is actually more powerful than doing some other means of automation. So there is this uh, not principle, but there is a way of recording something and then trying to play it back. So you try to record a scenario, log into a website, add something, select a product, add it to your basket, check out, pay, submit the order. Now you have recorded this session. Now you want to repeat this session. So now you just you there are tools who can intuitively do it. You just change the data.
Right.
This can also happen, but it is more flaky. Flaky means it will break. If anything changes, if the screen size changes, if you click somewhere, it will break. So that's flakiness. It should work every time the way it should. And if it doesn't work, then it's flaky. And that's why it's more powerful to use code, because in GUI you have more chances of things changing with your screen resolution, with your font, with your the platform that you are using to open the particular page, etc., etc. But with code, it's just looking at the backend, the source code, the HTML code. So it's more flexible and more powerful. So always use. That's why it's important to always use code, and that's why in automation testers skill set, one of the main requirement is, do you know how to code? Or even if you don't know how to code, do you know how to read code? Can you actually understand what's happening, even if you don't know what the logic is?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, to be honest, it's good that you talked about record and playback, because that's one of the things I was gonna ask you after, right now, like, automation frameworks, like, there are various frameworks which you follow when you do automation, and record and playback is one of them. I think another one is data driven. Tell us a little bit more
Yes.
about that.
So,
Yeah.
so there are different automation frameworks, and the industry has come across, and this is mostly to do with testing, on how you test software. So linear framework is basically you have record and playback. So you record something and you play it. So
Mm-hmm.
there is nothing else. It's as simple as that. But when it comes to data driven is basically you have data separate from the script logic. So what it means is, say all the data is in Excel or a CSV file, and say username, payment card details, product details, etc. So those are the things that you would use regularly, and address details. So you want to keep adding multiple addresses, so you can't think of addresses. So you have a database of addresses that every time you fill in a form, use this address. So all that is separate outside the logic. And in the script, you call the variable and you call the data source, and then you play with it. There are, of course, other automation frameworks, and you can easily Google about them. And in the description of this video, we can provide you with other things. But the key thing is, you have some scripts, you have some data, and you want to report something, and you want to handle errors. So that way, so there is something called as modular framework that you were talking about. So every function has its own piece of code. So it just focused on that particular function. There is keyword driven. So every function has its own keyword. So if you call the keyword, it executes the script on that particular function. So based on that, there are different types of framework, but majorly, if you are a beginner, you will go with a linear one. If you want to go a bit advanced, you go to data driven. And then if you want to go even more advanced, you go for a hybrid, which is the combination of some of these
Right.
functions, keywords, and data, linear, everything mixed together. Like in
That,
UiPath, right? You follow one principle. You follow multiple things.
yeah.
Somewhere recording playback is more useful. In some cases, it's more to do with separate the data and have the logic separate, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are different ways, and looking at the problem, and again, problem, knowing the problem statement. That's why looking at the problem and the acceptance criteria. Taking all of this into account, you understand the bespoke need for that robot, or and how you can, align your development matching the output that is needed for the business. So yeah, that's so important. And one of the things that you mentioned, data driven. I mean, there are two things that I'm most passionate about. One is RPA automation, and the other one is data. And data and big data is so powerful, and it gives so much insight in anything that you are doing. If you have data, you can make any any difficult decision becomes a lot easier if you have data and know how to represent that data in a insightful or
Yes.
in a meaningful way. And yeah, data driven automation is so powerful, and you can take automation to the next level. You can take like a self modifying robot or self or modifying automation system. So for example, something, if you have like a good monitoring system of the infrastructure, that monitoring system will keep collecting data. So it will know when any of the VM is being turned on or off, when any of the
Yes.
services,
Yes.
if there is a peak at particular time of the year or particular time of the month. For example, in accountancy, there is particular month-end activities and then year-end activities. And
Yes.
at that time, you'd need more resources. You might need to deploy more VMs. And if
Yes.
all of this data
Absolutely.
is collected, then you can automate this. So you would say, for example, just before end of June, like at the beginning of June, the procurement team will get an email that, oh, this month we're gonna need an additional set of resources, IT resources, procure them on time, etc., etc. And you could even further automate it. For example, you could have a like a for a different kind of event, you could have, normally the robot or, the code automation tool does a set of particular things. But then, you know, but it can also take another route, which is not really efficient for the current way the things are. But you could have every time the robot is or the code is performing, it can keep track of certain monitoring variables or values, and every time it ran in a particular way, if it falls, if it comes across an error or some sort of weakness, it marks down as, okay, this many times this happened. and then if it reaches a certain number, like 100 times or 1,000 times, then it will take that as, okay, now it's time to change this way of working, and I'm gonna do this other way until that way generates 1,000 errors and things like that. So you can
Yes.
have like a self-modifying kind of like a living organism
AI. So
kind of.
I'm coming to that. It's AI, artificial intelligence, and the way you're describing. Remember, you were talking about genetic algorithm
Yes.
in your talk. So this sounds something similar, right? So you try this approach. If this doesn't fail, if this doesn't work, try with a new set. But you know from the previous population what has worked, what has not worked, and you
Yes.
randomize some things, right? So
Absolutely.
so there are now tools in the market that 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 let people automate things without them actually doing a lot of coding. So the AI actually looks at what you're doing and generates code for you. So
Yes.
it's like a
Absolutely.
record and playback, but instead of just playing it back for you, it's giving you the code. And once the code is generated, then you just tweak it. So
Yeah.
it's done
Yeah.
most of the job for you as well, because that record and playback is also becomes repetitive after some time.
Yes. Yes. I
So
mean,
so
things are
just
going.
automate that.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I mean, things are going so advanced nowadays. Yeah, most of the things. I mean, we should actually, I mean, we've done one talk on genetic algorithm and AI. I mean, there are many other aspects of AI and many other algorithms in
Yes.
AI. We should do another one or two talks as well.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
But I think before we jump to that, the other thing I just realized, it came to my mind, industrial automation. So a
Mm.
lot of people, when they think that, okay, we have become lazy, industrialization is not good for the environment and things like that. I read a very interesting article, and they said that actually industrial automation has actually saved so much of man hours in doing repetitive work. Some of the examples are a washing machine. Humans
Mm.
used to spend so much time washing clothes every day, drying them, washing them and drying them. So washing machine came, dryer came, solved the problem. Then human beings spent a lot of time heating food. Microwave oven came, solved that problem. Human beings spent a lot of time washing dishes. A dishwasher came. A dishwasher was actually invented by a woman. Many people don't know it, but a dishwasher was invented by a woman because the woman who invented it saw that a lot of her time is going in washing dishes, drying them, cleaning them, and putting them back. So this industrial automation saved so much time. So now we have all these gadgets at home, and we see, okay, wow, we can do so many things, but we don't think like, okay, it has actually automated our lives. Those repetitive tasks we have now automated using those devices. So that's the level of repetitive work that needs to be automated that I'm talking about. So we started the talk with software automation, but automation needs to be applied to all parts of our lives. Anything that you are doing more than 3 times, as you mentioned, you should automate.
Yes. Yes. Very much so. Right. Okay. Well, that's good. Good. And also, there is another thing that is related to automation is how you trigger that automation. A lot of the times, the trigger is quite important because, you know, if you actually have to remember and click play or click start, that's actually also something you don't want to do. And there might be dependent triggers, and I think the first thing is Windows scheduler. You can schedule something.
Yes,
So the
yes,
trigger is time based, but then you can also trigger things based on another event, like if you receive an email or things like that. And then there are there are some triggers which are you are okay with as humans. I mean, we'll probably do another talk on accessibility, but for example, in my home, I've tried to automate as much as possible with voice control.
yes,
I can turn on and off lights, and I can turn on and off the heating. I can also
yes,
open and close the curtains, and you know all of them separately might not be much, but I can also program them. So like 6 o'clock in the morning, you do all of them. You open the
yes,
curtains, you turn on the heating, and you turn on the light. And you could also turn on the coffee machine, turn on the computer. So overall, you're not you wake up to an already productive environment. So you can just start. You don't have to do all of these things, and you can do your morning exercise and then just start
No,
being.
that is quite fascinating. There is this tool called if this then that,
Yes.
IFTTT, and it
Yes.
helps you do all these things. Like if this happens, if and there is I don't know if you're aware, there is this geo automation. So I mean, it's not the right word, but basically what happens is the moment your phone knows that you have left a particular location, it will trigger something. So
Yes.
using the GPS, you can actually trigger some events from your phone.
Absolutely.
So the moment your GPS is always on, right? So the moment you leave a particular geofence area, say your office,
Mhm.
it will start the heater in your house. It will switch on the lights. It'll turn on the heating, etc. The kettle. It'll warm the water for you because it knows that okay, you are at this location. You are this far away. So let's trigger all those events and then switch it on for you.
Absolutely. I mean, right now during pandemic, it's probably not going to be
Exactly.
geolocated right now, but it will definitely be useful. Based on it doesn't have to be office or home. It could be
No, it's
whenever you're
already
going
there
out.
on iPhones. It's already
Yes,
there
yes.
on
No,
iPhones.
I have
Yeah.
IFTTT app
Oh,
in
okay.
my phone. Yes, it
Yeah.
is such a useful app, and it can become so powerful. And you don't have to code them, or you don't have to do this series of automation. You also get a lot of preset ones that are already created
Yes.
by people around the world. So you can just download and turn that on, and then it's just ready to go. You can also do, like, if you have CCTV at home, you probably don't want to be recording all the time, but when you're leaving your geolocation, it turns on and it will notify you if there is a change in the recording. It will just tell you, like, if a burglar just entered your
Yes.
property, you'll get notification straight away. And yeah, there could be many things that it does as you leave your property, as you come in, and not just that. It could be based on many other things. I mean, say for example, if you go on a like a backpacking for 5 months, like you
Yes.
did, if the temperature falls below 0 degrees, then for
Yes.
home maintenance, your boiler does
True.
need to turn on for a routine maintenance, so the pipes don't get blocked by ice and stuff like that. So that could also be automated, and that's something that happens rarely, but that it does need to be taken care of. And you wouldn't know if you were in South America what's happening in UK weathers, and you don't want to be always
True.
monitoring
Very
that.
true.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
this was one of our worries as well, like the icing problem on pipes. If the pipe is frozen, the boiler doesn't turn on. If the pipe cracks, there is water leakage. What will we do? So yeah, so
yes.
automation helps, especially also turning on lights. A burglar, if they are aware that you are away from home, they'll see if the lights are turned off for a particular duration of time. But if you
Yes.
can turn it on and off regularly using an app, then it tells, okay, someone is there living in the house because the
Yes,
lights get turned
absolutely.
on and off. So yes, that level of automation is, again, I mean, it's interesting, right? We started with software automation and now we have gone into Internet of Things. We are talking about how to
Yes.
automate our lives. And it is quite fascinating. People think that it makes us lazy, but I think it makes us more productive
Yes,
because all those
absolutely.
mundane tasks that we used to spend so much time now on have
Yeah,
been automated.
yeah, your mind is not occupied with these trivial things, and you just freed. And if you decide not to do anything, even that's good, because you just have some relaxing time for your mind. You just don't have to do anything. It's not like you have to be
Absolutely.
productive 24 hours a day, but freeing up your mind is also important, and that automation helps us do that. Right. So yeah, I think we've covered a lot, quite diverse talk
Yes.
today, and I've actually thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, automation is a very exciting subject for me, and I'm sure it's for you as well. I don't have
Same.
any other
Yes.
questions, but anything else you'd like to add at the end?
So in the end, just as Rinat mentioned, if you do things three times, more than three times, same thing, just try to think about how to automate it. There are tools. I think once you know what the problem is, it's very easy to find a tool for it, and you can easily quickly do a Google search for it. In the video, today's video, what we'll do is we'll provide some links which you can use to automate some of your life, including software automation, IFTT, device automation, etc., which will be helpful. But always try to automate and make your life more productive, because that will help you to achieve far many things that you possibly couldn't, because you were doing the same task again and again, and that's been eating up your time. So thank you for
Absolutely.
listening again.
Yes, thank you, viewers and listeners. And just want to add as well that obviously we are doing this talk every week, and if you have a particular expertise in any tech subjects, do reach out to us. You could, we could have you. We would love to have you as a guest speaker. And even if you'd rather not speak, but if you have a burning question or a particular topic that you would like us to cover, please comment on our YouTube videos, or reach out to us through our contact details that is available in any of our podcast pages, or even YouTube video. So yes, definitely start a conversation. Let us know, reach out, let us know what you think, or if nothing else, just feedback would be nice. So yeah, thank you very much, guys, for listening, and hope to see you guys again next week with more and more exciting topics.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.